Hey, Chris, we still in the waiting room here, or where are we?
I am waiting to see if we have any other board members before I let everyone else in, but it appears it is time to let everyone else in. So,
All right. Good luck, everyone. On my account, Chris, there's 6 board members on right now.
I have 5. Who am I missing?
Spur, Yuko, Steiner, Mullen,
Yep.
Toth,
6.
and I think Jamie's here too. Did I see Dr. Levine somewhere? Yep, there's Dr. Levine. The one who escaped our agenda this session. Don't take it personally, Jamie.
I'm sure it'll come back to me.
All right. Well, let's go with 6, Chris. Right? We had Scott, Iman, and Diana were promised to attend.
Yeah, we're waiting for Scott.
I see Iman on the screen.
Oh, do you know? Okay.
Yep.
Good eye, Tom.
I don't see his
Oh,
name,
there
but
he
I see
is.
customer.
I see a customer.
Yeah.
Hi, Mr. Millay. Hey, Iman. All right. Let's waste no time and get into it. Michelle, you're good?
Yep, I'm good. Thank you.
All right, let's do it. Good evening and welcome to the May 3rd, 2021 meeting of the City of Summit Zoning Board of Adjustment. My name is Stephen Spur and I am the chairman of the Summit Zoning Board. In accordance with New Jersey Statute 10:4-10, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to a newspaper of record and has been posted here in City Hall. This meeting is a judicial proceeding. Any questions or comments must be limited to the issues that are relevant to what the board may legally consider in reaching a decision, and decorum appropriate to a judicial hearing must be maintained at all times. This meeting is being conducted virtually via video conferencing in lieu of meeting in the council chamber at Summit City Hall, Summit, New Jersey. This meeting is being live streamed to the city's YouTube page. In addition, members of the public can view and participate in the meeting by following the link provided on the agenda. Members of the public may also submit written comments and questions to the zoning board secretary in advance of the meeting to be read aloud during the meeting. Such written comments shall not be considered testimonial and shall not be considered by the board in its determination on any application. Individuals wishing to provide testimony as to any application must participate virtually with both audio and video enabled. Andy Ball is the zoning board's attorney. He will advise board members on matters of law and is the key interface with an applicant's attorney. Mr. Ball does not vote on the applications. Chris Nicola is a city employee and is the zoning board secretary. Mr. Nicola works with applicants on getting their applications together, planning our agendas, and keeping our meeting minutes. Mr. Nicola also does not vote on the applications. Our board consists of 7 regular members and up to 4 alternates. All members can participate in the hearings tonight, but a maximum of 7 can vote. Most applications require a simple majority to be approved. Some applications require 5 affirmative votes to be approved. You'll be told which majority will be required before we begin our deliberations. Mr. Nicola, will you please call the roll of the members?
Certainly. Chairman Spur.
Here.
Vice Chairwoman Newell, we're expecting in a little bit. Mr. Yuko.
Here.
Here.
Mr. Mullen.
Here.
Mr. Ornstein is excused. Mr. Millet?
Here.
Mr. Loikitz? We're expecting, but not here right now. Ms. Toth?
Here.
Ms. Sager?
Here.
Dr. Levine?
Here.
All right, you have a quorum. You can proceed.
Great. We generally hear the cases in the order they are listed on the agenda. We try to have each hearing last no more than 30 minutes, but we do understand that some cases are too complex to be heard within that time frame. Each hearing begins with the applicant or their attorney giving an overview of the application and the variances that are required. We then hear from any expert witnesses the applicant may have to help explain the application and why the variances are needed. The board members may ask questions of the applicant, their attorney, and the expert witnesses. Once the board members and the board professionals are done with their questioning, the public will have an opportunity to ask questions. This is not the time to tell us what you think about this case. That opportunity comes at the end of the hearing. Before you ask your questions, we need to know who you are and where you live. It is important that our court reporter be able to keep a clear and accurate public record. Please state your name before speaking or asking a question, and please do not talk over each other. This is even more important under the current circumstances. After all witnesses have been heard, members of the audience have their second opportunity to speak. And at that time, you may express your opinion, positive or negative, about the application. Then the public hearing is closed, and we go into executive session where the board members discuss the case and vote. You'll be able to listen to our executive session, but you will not normally be able to participate in our discussion. Most applications are heard and decided in the same evening. If a case requires additional information or testimony that cannot be presented tonight, we will carry your case to another date and it will not be decided tonight. Krista Anderson, the city's zoning officer, has asked that I remind all applicants that they must read carefully the resolution that documents the zoning board's decision and to pay particular attention to the conditions contained in the resolution. For example, if a landscaping plan is required, you must obtain one and submit it to John Linson, the city's forester. If a grading plan is required, you must have one prepared by a civil engineer and submit 3 copies along with the application fee to the city's engineering division. Failure to satisfy all conditions in a resolution will result in a delay in approving your application, as it will cause extra work for city zoning staff. The resolutions documenting the board's decision will normally be available 1 month after we decide the case. When I call your name, please tell me how many witnesses you have and whether you think you can complete your case within 30 minutes. First on the agenda is 49 Montrose, Byung-Hun Choi and Hana Choi. I think I saw you in here. Hello, can you, do you have an attorney with you? You can cop off mute for a quick second.
I'm Alan Barkin. I am representing Mr. and Mrs. Choi.
Hello, Mr. Barkin.
We anticipate 3 witnesses, including Mr. and Mrs. Choi, I'm counting as 1. We have 2 professionals, and we think we can do it in 30 minutes.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Barkin. Second is Vagmin and Tayal Vora, 38 Londonderry Way.
James Weber of Dempsey, and Sheehan. On behalf of the applicants, we have 2 witnesses and we'll be able to complete it within 30 minutes.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Weber. Number 3, Claremont Corporate Center LLC, 535 Springfield. Mr. Sheehan, are you the attorney for that case?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. We have 3 witnesses potential, but I think that this application, since it is a modification of a previously approved plan in 2007, that the landscape architect will consent to a condition of approval to be approved by John Linson. He will be available for questions. If the board at that time decides they want a full presentation, he can give it. I believe that we can complete within 30 minutes.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Sheehan, for helping us work towards that goal. The 4th application on the agenda this evening is David and Melissa Marino, 3 Edison Drive. Chris, yeah. All right.
Is that just me, right?
No, that was me as well. I'm not sure how you're going to put that in the record, Michelle, but good luck. Maybe Melissa and David, do you have an attorney representing you tonight? So, all right. Surrender. All right.
I'm their architect. They just texted me that they're having a little bit of trouble with their Zoom.
Okay. Excellent. Maybe just quickly, if you don't mind, are there any other professionals that you're aware of joining that case? Okay.
No, just me.
Okay. All right. You guys are fourth on the agenda. So Melissa and David, I encourage you to work on that technical issue. You've got some time, but we'll look forward to hearing you towards the close of the hearing this evening.
Yeah, perhaps exit and then rejoin the meeting. That might help. And then also Liz is now in the meeting and eligible to vote for 49 Montrose.
Okay. Excellent. All right, Mr. Barkin, if you'd care to start us off here for 49 Montrose Avenue. Just hop off and mute for me first, please.
Thank you for reminding me.
You're welcome.
It's hard to keep track of it all. I represent Mr. and Mrs. Choi, who live at 49 Montrose. They've lived there for a number of years, and they are now looking to expand the home and continue to live in it. They are adding only 228.3 square feet to the first floor, and then adding a partial second floor of 709 square feet. I'll leave more of the details to the architect and the engineer and to my clients. But as the result of these changes, they're going to increase their ground coverage, their building coverage from 23.5% to 25.9%. So the standard is 20%. They're already in excess of that, and they are increasing it by about 1.5%. It's not de minimis, but it's not much either. We know we have to be here, but we don't think we're making a substantial change and impact on the property and to the neighbors. The partial addition is somewhat set back, and so it's barely visible from the street, or will be less visible than would otherwise be if it was a full-size addition. So that's what we're looking for, and so I would like to start by having our architect, Scott Bella, sworn in, and he'll take you through the details of the plan.
Good evening. Good evening. If you could raise your right hand, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do, yes.
And please state your name, spell your last name.
Scott Bella, B-E-L-L-A.
Thank you. And would you briefly describe your background, experience, and 3 boards you appeared before aside from Summit recently?
Yes, licensed architect in New Jersey. Been licensed for 25 years. Been in private practice for that long. About 95% of my work is all residential, additions, alterations, new construction. Again, I am licensed and in good standing in the state of New Jersey. I've been in many boards throughout, mostly Bergen County, because that's the area that I live and work. I would say Ridgewood, Glen Rock, Fairlawn are 3 that come to mind, but there have been many more than that.
All right, and unless there's any questions, I imagine the board would like to accept your credentials as an architect at this point.
We would. Welcome to Union County, Mr. Bella. You may continue.
Thank you very much. Yes, so what I'd like to do is run through the project in a little more detail. We are looking to expand the existing dwelling. The existing dwelling currently is a 1-story, 3-bedroom dwelling. In addition to that, it has a nice sized living room and an ample sized den. However, the kitchen and eating area is very, very tiny and very difficult to, do the daily food intake, sit down eating, that kind of thing. So they're looking to expand the first floor to enlarge that portion of the house. The rest of the first floor would remain intact and remain as is. So looking to do a rear yard addition on the first floor that would allow for a larger, more comfortable kitchen/eating area. And then that would then spill out to a new wood deck out to the rear yard for outdoor eating. In addition to that, they're looking to put, as Alan had suggested, the partial addition on the second floor, which would allow for a 4th bedroom, and that would be what we are proposing, the master suite. The master suite would comprise of a full bathroom, ample closet space, and in addition to that, a home office, which, as we all know, more and more people are working home these days, and it's a space that they would love to be able to add to their home in order to do that. As far as the overall aesthetics, we are looking to keep with the existing context of the neighborhood. Roof lines are of residential feel. The materials will be, again, as of residential feel, horizontal siding, that kind of thing. We did look at a larger addition on the second floor. However, we just don't need the space. If we were to go over more than what we are proposing, we would basically have too much space. And I know that a lot of people say there's never too much space, but in our case, proportionately, this 4-bedroom house works very well with the rest of the dwelling.
Mr. Bell, if we could just interrupt you for a quick second,
Sure.
would it be helpful if our secretary shared one of the exhibits just to illustrate what you're discussing?
I'm okay with that, and I have it in front of me, but if the board needs it, I have no problem doing it either way. Yeah.
Whatever you prefer. We're pretty tech savvy these days.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'd
Mr.
like
Barkin.
to, yes, I'd like to bring up the original plan, not the site plan.
Okay.
I'm just not quite sure what you're calling it in your records.
Mr. Nicole is gonna, oh, there's his weekend car. Let's see what he's got for us. Just might help the any interested member of the interested public understand what we're discussing.
Correct.
So, Mr. Bell, if you want to take us through each of the floors and get an idea of what you're going to do to each one.
Okay, so if you could move on to the next page, this is the crawl space and not much to speak about there. Okay, so if you look at this page, what you see on the left-hand side is the first floor plan existing plus the proposed new. And if you look on the left side of the drawing, you'll see the 3 bedrooms, and they will remain intact. In the front of the building or the downside on the page is the living room, and off to the right is the den. And as you walk then from the living room to the back area, that's where we're proposing to enlarge the kitchen and eating area. In addition to that, we would have a sliding glass door that would allow us to go out to a new wood deck in the back, again, for entertaining and outdoor eating in the yard. If we could move to the right on the second floor, please. So this second floor plan that we're looking at would allow us to come up over the existing downstairs basement stairs to allow us to come up to a second floor upper hall, if you will, and then enter into the back left side of the dwelling into the master bedroom, which would house, again, a full bathroom as well as an ample closet, walk-in closet that would be shared. And to the front of the floor plan that we're looking at is the home office. Roughly around 8 by 12/7, a very modest office. But again, you know, with technology today, everyone is much more compact. And basically, that is the second floor. So if we
Mr.
want
Bella,
yes.
the thin lines outside the thicker lines, that represents the first floor.
That is correct. Yes.
So
that's the roof line of the first floor. Yes.
And so the heavier lines represent the space that you're developing on the second floor.
Correct. Proposed new walls. Yes. So if we can scoot down to the next page, we can take a look at the elevations, and that could probably we can look at all of them at once. I think aesthetically we can see that. So if you look at the bottom left would be the front elevation. And again, you'll see for the most part throughout the building, except for there's one portion in the rear, we're working with all hip roofs, which basically would slope up in all 4 directions, and keeping in context, not only with the neighborhood, but more so with the current dwelling and current roof line that exists. So aesthetically, we are looking to do those type of roof lines as well as horizontal siding, wood deck, everything that you would see in a standard neighborhood these days.
Hey man, there's background noise. It sounds like somebody has a TV on.
Yeah, I do.
That's third in Cardinals history.
Someone's watching the Cardinals on baseball. If you could just mute your microphone, that'd be helpful. Thank you.
Third on that list.
All right. I think we solved it. All right, you can continue, Mr. Bella. Thank you, Michelle.
So yeah, so that's the elevations that we're looking at here. One of the things that I wanted to briefly address was, I believe in the report, there was a comment or a question about potentially going over the existing first floor in its entirety to bring the house more in context with the existing neighborhood. And the reason that we didn't do that was twofold. One of which that I mentioned was we really don't need that much space, and proportionately, we believe that this works better in terms of the overall proportion. But secondly, we didn't want to overbuild and ask for a second variance. That would have required that we would have had to ask for an FAR variance in addition to the building coverage today. So if in fact we went straight up over the first floor, again, we would be going over the FAR and having to ask for that variance as well. That's basically all of the drawings in terms of design-wise. So if anyone has any questions, I'm more than happy to answer.
We'll start with our engineer, Mr. Dower. Any questions for the architect?
The only questions we had were there some discrepancies between the engineering and the architectural plans, and I was just wondering how that was going to be resolved.
Yeah, I do have a little clarification on that. We went over, we had a brief meeting today, and the engineer's plan does not show there's an existing deck, a portion of which we're removing and a portion of which is staying. And I believe the engineer's drawing does not show that piece, and that's why his numbers are a little lower than mine. So my numbers would be more accurate for this evening's meeting, and my numbers would be higher in that we're asking for 25.9% for the building coverage. So we prefer to go with the higher number, even if I'm incorrect, but we discussed it today and my numbers are more accurate because of the deck that is not shown on his plan.
Yes, well, my understanding is the engineer's plan left off the portion of the deck that is remaining, and
Yes.
that's the discrepancy. And or the final building plans that are submitted will be consistent with the architect's plan.
Yes, correct.
And there were
No
some
further
other,
questions.
I believe the engineer had some other comments about discrepancies and some missing points, all of which we would accept as conditions to be corrected at a later time.
Excellent. Mr. Sneckis, anything you'd like to question the architect on?
No questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Members of the board, anything on your mind? Questions for the architect? No? Okay. Skimming. All right. This is opportunities for members of the public to ask any questions of this witness. Again, just questions if you're here for this case. Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Bella. Mr. Barkin, if you'd like to take us to your next witness.
Yes, our next witness is Edward Deck, licensed engineer.
And if you would kindly raise your right hand, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
And please state your name, spell your last name.
Edward, middle initial S, last name Deck, D-E-C.
Thank you. And same thing, would you kindly give us your background, experience, and 3 boards you've appeared before aside from some?
Sure. I'm a graduate of New Jersey Institute of Technology. I am a licensed professional civil engineer and a licensed professional land surveyor in the state of New Jersey. I'm in good standing with both licenses. I am the principal of Guariello and Deck Associates since 1998. I've been in front of the board a number of times in the last 15 years. I've also been in front of numerous boards within Union County and throughout New Jersey. Also, I was the municipal engineer in Roosevelt Park and also in Cranford.
All right, thank you. And same thing, unless there's any questions, I'm guessing the board would like to accept your credentials as a professional engineer.
We will accept your credentials and take your wood paneled office as a further sign of your experience. So welcome, Mr. Deck.
Thank you.
Mr. Deck, if you'll take us through the site plan.
Sure.
Want to put it up on the screen, it would be better.
Sure. I don't know if you want me to share mine or should we go with what you have available to you?
Chris, do you want to put up Mr. Deck's plan? Thank you.
Okay. Those are the architecturals, obviously.
Yeah, that's the architectural. Yeah, we're going to go with the grading plan. Yes, thank you.
That's it. Terrific. Okay. The site itself is made up of comprised of 9,470 square feet. We meet all of the bulk requirements within that zone as far as lot width, lot depth, and the front setback. Side yard setbacks are existing. We are not expanding in any direction, either to the left or to the right. All of our addition or expansion is, I would call, infill between the outer dimensions of the building itself. The overall lot itself has an existing driveway, which goes to the rear of the property. At that point, there's an existing garage. The lot itself is preliminarily fairly flat. We have a cross slope of about 3 feet between the front left to the rear right of the property. We are not changing anything as far as grading goes. We do show proposed grades in the rear, although those match fairly closely to the existing grade. So there are going to be no major or any significant changes to the yard, the way it drains, and the area around the building will remain the same. Again, most of the work is on the inside portion of the building. We are proposing a wood deck towards the rear. And as Mr. Bella and also Mr. Barkin pointed out and you can see here also on my drawing, that I left out that deck that's immediately to the right rear, yes, right there, of the building. And that would account for the difference in square footages between my calculations and the architect's calculations. I guess the important thing to point out is that although we do exceed the building coverage and we're expanding it slightly, I think it's about 226 square feet from what's there now. The overall lot coverage is still below the allowable of 40%. So we are providing access from the rear, as Mr. Bella pointed out. So I think as far as my testimony goes, I think, and also I guess I could point out too that the increase in runoff is de minimis. So we are not impacting the adjoining properties in any way.
Thank you, Mr. Deck.
Mr. Dower, do you have any questions for Mr. Deck?
The only question I think, well, we mentioned about downspouts, which is kind of a standard comment, would be if there were the air conditioning units and or if a generator is proposed, where would they be located?
I think that would be best answered by Mr. Bella, but we would make sure that we maintain that 5-foot separation between the property line and those components that are going to be placed. And the downspouts will be directed towards the rear of the properties as opposed to the side.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Just to build on that, Mr. Barkin, in your earlier comment as well, as we typically condition acceptance of the applications on approval, or rather acceptance of the engineering letter, and that captures all the points. So Mr. Ball would include that in the resolution. Okay, Mr. Sneckis, anything for the engineer?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Members of the board, any questions for the engineer, Mr. Deck?
I just have one. I'm not sure if it's who's best to answer this, but the zoning officer notes the issue of that shed. If that was mentioned early in the hearing, I'm sorry I missed it, but are there any plans to do anything about the shed?
Well, I was going to have my clients address that,
Okay.
but generally speaking, they'd like to keep it. And that's what they're going for. It's as they'll testify, it was there when they bought the house, and subsequent to them buying the house, their neighbor to the rear, the only people who would impact, built a 6-foot fence, so they're not even seeing it anymore. So, but I'll have my clients address that.
Okay.
Other questions from members of the board for this witness, the engineer? Okay, seeing none. Any questions from members of the public for the engineer? Okay, Seeing and hearing none. All right, Mr. Barkin, your next witness.
I will call Hannah Choi.
And Ms. Choi, if you could please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
And please state your name, spell your last name for the record.
Hannah Choi, CHOI.
Thank you. Counsel, your witness.
Ms. Choi, how long have you and Mr. Choi owned the home?
I lived in this house for 5 years.
And you are looking to expand it by enlarging the kitchen and adding another bedroom, bath, and office on the second floor. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And is it correct that as a result of this expansion, you have to take down most of the existing decks, or you're building a new deck to replace it?
Yes.
There's the question that the planner raised about, the zoning officer rather raised about the shed in the back. Can you describe the shed and how you use it, and how, how long it's been there, et cetera?
So the shed was there from when we purchased by this house, and then these are used for keeping all the gardening, the machines and unit for the snow blower, etc. And then this is the plastic types of a shed, easily movable, and I don't think this is going to be an impact to our neighbors, since they have a hard the fence between houses. So this is like a wooden boarded the fence that 6 feet height, and our shed is also 6 feet as well. So it's really hard to see from the neighborhood perspective. And if we are considered to move to the other side of the house, actually that's really bad for our next door, because we have open backyard, which are almost like the kids are sharing the backyard and then play on lawn. So having something in between that house will be like authentically not great looking. So that's my concern. But if the board requires to move the shed to have a 5 feet distance, we will find we will absolutely make it happen. But in my opinion, where it is located is the best the place to keep it.
And you've, in planning this addition, did you take into consideration the neighboring homes?
Yeah, absolutely. So Scott did a great job to keeping this original design, and then original house, the house design. So it's there will be the less there will be keeping almost the same appearance from the current house, and then there will be the especially front part and then side part of the house. There will be minimum changes, so the neighbor wouldn't be affected by our the extension. And our house is one of the ranch house that are remained in our the street. The past years, like they've been a lot of renovation, and then having changed it to the 2-story houses. So we moved 5 years ago when my kids were first grade and third grade. And right now my son is going to middle school in this September, and then my daughter is also the 8th grade, will be 8th grade in the middle school as well. And we only have one bathroom to share in the first floor for whole family. So it's kind of hard to have 2 teenagers using one bathroom with ourselves. So we are hoping to having this additional space for our expanding the growing family, and hope we can reserve it tonight.
Thank you, Mrs. Choi.
Mhm.
I have no further questions.
My first question to Mr. Ball would be, in order to address the applicant's request to leave the shed, we would want to add a variance to permit the encroachment into the rear yard setback that we're talking about.
Yeah, I have to agree. It wasn't pointed out at the time of our submission of the plan, so we didn't include it as well. But
Yeah, so that's what we would need. And off the top of my head, I remember relatively recently, there was also a similar shed issue. I think it came up because the ordinance requirements have changed relatively recently. And it was the same situation in that one where the shed was located on the property boundary before the applicants bought the house. Usually our recommendation would be that the shed be conditioned that if it's ever damaged or they sought to replace it or remove it, that it would have to be relocated in a conforming condition location rather.
that would be
Acceptable, Mr. Barkin?
that would be acceptable. Yes.
Okay. Any objection from members of the board proceeding with that additional condition? Okay, great. All right, very reasonable tonight. Mr. Troy, Mr. Troy, you're lucky. You found a good audience. Any questions from Mr. Dow or Mr. Sneckis for the applicants?
No questions.
No questions.
Questions from members of the board for the applicants? Nope, hearing and seeing none. Questions from members of the public for the applicants? Okay, quiet group. This is great. Everybody else is following tonight. Remember this pace. This is good stuff. Let's see here. Any further comments, Mr. Barkin, you'd like to add?
No, we think it's a very straightforward application. What you see is what they're going to get. And we think it's, they had the fact that it started off as a ranch created a big footprint. And now as they're making this modest addition, they're kind of stuck with that big footprint. And that's why we're here. So we hope that you'll grant the variance. We believe that it'll be a benefit in addition to the town. Thank you.
Okay. And just before we move into deliberations, I'll check one more time. Any other members of the public want to chime in on this application? All right. Hearing and seeing none. Mr. Ball, would you run us through the conditions?
Sure. So I've got 3 conditions. First is that the applicants will comply with the conditions noted in the engineer's report. Second is that the final submitted plans will be corrected so that they're consistent. And the third and final condition is that the non-conforming shed, if it's damaged, replaced, or relocated, will be placed in the conforming location.
Okay. And to be clear on that third point, Andy, does that constitute also a second variance that we're voting on tonight?
That would normally be an added variance, yes.
Okay. All right. All right. Who would like to open up deliberations? All right. Mr. Mullen cast his eyes down first. Mr. Mullen, what do you think?
Well, judging by the volume of questions from the board, I think we're probably all of fairly like mind here. Use the word reasonable to describe the proceedings, but I would also use it to describe this request. This seems like a very, very modest addition. When you drive around the neighborhood, it's the finished product will be consistent with other homes in the area. There's, an existing hardship with the ranch house situated on what's a fairly small lot, and I think it would be unreasonable to force the applicant to tear down a portion of their home just to get a bigger home within the exact confines where one would want it to achieve the proper building coverage. I don't think there's any issue with stormwater runoff, so I am supportive of the applicants not sharing a bathroom with teenagers. So I will be in favor of this application.
Mr. Mullen, any other feedback, input from the board?
I would just second all that. I mean, I was happy to see that there no concerns about impact on neighbors in terms of force. There was no recommendations for screening. And as Mr. Mullen noted, there's no concerns about stormwater. And it is in character, the size and character with the neighborhood. So yeah, for all the same reasons, I would support it as well.
Okay, Excellent. We definitely do appreciate, Mr. Barkin, and your professionals, your efforts to minimize the number and intensity of variances requested. So with that, I will entertain a motion to approve the application.
So moved.
Mr. Yuko, do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Mullen, Chris, will you give us a roll call?
Sure. Vice Chairwoman Newell,
Yes.
Mr. Yuko,
Yes.
Mr. Steiner,
Yes.
Mr. Mullen,
Yes.
Mr. Malay,
Yes.
Ms. Toth,
Yes.
and Chairman Spur.
Yes. All right. Thank you, Choi's. Good luck with your project.
Thank you very much. We appreciate
you.
all your efforts. Bye now.
You're welcome. All right, let's keep up the pace here. 38 Londonderry Way, Mr. Weber.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. James Weber of Dempsey, Dempsey & Sheehan on behalf of Dr. and Mrs. Vora on 38 Londonderry Way. This is an application for a property that's located in the R15 zone district, but the property contains only 8,500 plus square feet. So it's just a little bit more than half the size in the zone district. In fact, I think it's probably the smallest lot on Londonderry and in this area. The other factor that the board would be asked to consider is the presence of the arboretum on the rear of the property. The property directly borders the arboretum, and as a result, from the board's considerations of the application, in terms of any negative effect, such as a substantial detriment on the public good, the property directly behind them is the publicly owned arboretum. The third factor I would submit to the board for consideration is the presence of a lawfully existing single-family house. If I could ask Mr. Nicola to pull up one of the exhibits, and that would be the plan that's been prepared by Ms. Sears. And all right. And what I'm asking Mr. Nicola to do is to point out on the site plan the presence of the 45-foot setback and the fact that it traverses the existing house. So if I could ask him to go to the site plan proposed and expand that. And there we go. Thank you. If we can go a little bit larger, please, Mr. Nicola. The architect has prepared within the split level dwelling a dashed line, and that dashed line shows the 45-foot rear yard traversing the building, the side yard, and likewise the other side yard. But it is that 45-foot rear yard that poses the undue hardship and practical difficulty in improving this property. What is proposed by the applicants is the construction of a master bedroom for this existing 3-bedroom house. That master bedroom is consistent with the north side of Summit and with the amenities that you would expect. It is a 672 addition. It is within the entirely within the footprint of the existing building, and is shown in that dashed or hashed line. As you can see, it does not extend over the back of the property. There's a 1-story wing, if you will, of the property that is 25 feet from the rear lot line. And this addition does not extend over that. Instead, it stays over the main portion of the building. The reports of Krista Anderson have indicated that there is that setback of 37.7 feet to the proposed 672 square foot master bedroom addition on the second floor, where 45 feet is required. There's also a proposed patio. You can see the enlarged patio, which is designated with the arrow, and that is consistent with the existing setback of the existing patio. But again, because of the size of the property, the proximity of the rear yard, and you're only allowed to go in 10 feet from the 45, so you're allowed to go to 35 feet from the rear lot line. What is being proposed is a continuation of the existing setback of 24 feet, 26 feet to the end. There is also, Chris Anderson notes, if I can call to the next exhibit, please, Mr. Nicola, prepared by the architect. Thank you. And we go down to the lower right-hand corner. If we go into the floor plan, you'll see that at the bottom of that design, on the right-hand side, we see the basement garage plan. The basement garage plan has a breezeway that's proposed along the back of the property, an attractive design, and also has a bump out. That bump out intruded on the garage space, creating a variance condition. That bump out is going to be eliminated, and as a result, the request for the variance associated with the bump out has been eliminated. Because of the small size of the lot, the lot coverage is going to be expanded. We thought it was only going to be expanded 71 square feet. However, Krista Anderson's review and her calculations show that it's being expanded 128 square feet. Mr. Dewar, in his report, had indicated that when it was being expanded 71 square feet, it was de minimis and that no stormwater management plan was being required. I asked him, and he will obviously advise the board whether or not the 128 square feet of net increase in lot coverage has changed his mind and whether it remains de minimis. He has indicated that it remains de minimis. The lot coverage is the function of the patio. And again, that's where the arboretum to the rear, who would be affected by the larger patio, has less of a substantial detriment that would ordinarily be considered by the board should this be a residential neighbor to the rear. The other variance, and we accept Krista Anderson's calculations of 33.8, where originally it was believed to be 30% increase because of the 672. And that's because Krista Anderson indicated that the breezeway and the powder room behind the garage should have been included in the floor area ratio calculations. As a result, we accede to that. As a result, the application is amended to request a variance of 33.8 FAR. Again, a function of the small size of the lot compared to the R15 zone. I believe that the 33% ends up with a home of approximately 2,900 square feet in gross floor area, well consistent with the north side of Summit. And in terms of lot coverage, I almost forgot to mention, the Voras have already, through their architect, removed lot coverage. They removed a walkway that was around the house and have taken other steps to remove the lot coverage to the most that they could in order to bring that as low as possible. Unless the board has any questions of me on this proffer, I would ask that Dr. and Mrs. Vora be called to the stand, be sworn in to give testimony in this matter.
We're just going to pause for a quick second, Mr. Weber, just to clarify the voting members on this application. So Mr. Yuko and Dr. Levine are board members at Reeves Reed Arboretum and typically recused from applications that are adjacent to that property. So and Chris, you can double check this on me. The voting members for this application are Spur, Newell, Steiner, Mullen, Millay, Toth, and Sager. That's 7 members.
7 would be fine. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That works for you, Chris? I got my count right?
Yeah, I didn't note actual recusals, so should we note them for the record at this point?
If we can. Sorry, Dr. Levine too. Tom typically recuses in these instances as well. He reminded me that you're a board member at the Arboretum as well.
And I'm sorry, I forgot to say anything before the meeting, so my fault too.
All right, so you guys can hop off video. Cool. You can hop off video and go get a coffee or something, and we'll call you back for the 3rd case. Thank you, Mr. Weber. Just want to be clear as you move forward. I know this is requesting a D variance, so we want to make sure you're all set.
Thank you.
Okay, you may proceed.
I would ask that Dr. and Mrs. Vora be called to the stand to be sworn in to give testimony in this matter.
All right, if you would each please raise your right hand, unmute yourself. There you go. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Yes, I do.
And one at a time, please state your name, spell your last name.
Tejal Vora, V as in Victor, O-R-A.
Bhagman Vora, V as in Victor, O-R-A.
Thank you.
Hello, folks. It's good to see you back, Dr. Vora. Dr. Vora has just come, I believe, in from India, where he was attending to his family. So it's good to see him back. Are you the owners of the property at 38 Londonderry Way, which is the subject of the application before the board tonight?
Yeah. Yes, we are.
And you brought an application before the board with regard to a proposal to improve the property, is that correct?
That is correct.
And what's the purpose of the application?
The purpose is essentially to add a master suite to the 3-bedroom property, and in addition, renovate it and bring it. It's an old house. It's a 1955 built house. It's a bit dated, so we'd like to renovate it, bring it up to recent relevant standards, and make it our home, most importantly.
And I believe that when we were discussing this, the term was used, you're going to renovate it from the top to the bottom.
Yeah, the hope is that, yes, almost most of it. Yeah, we're going to try and leave as much as we can, but no, yes, we'd love to do that if the board allows.
And have you had an opportunity to speak with your neighbors with regard to what was proposed?
Yes, we have. We seem to have lovely neighbors to the left and right of us. They've been really nice to us. We've sent them the plans. They've had a look. In fact, I think Mark Nelson on our left, right? 36. They approved the plan. They liked it. So yes, I believe they are in support of our plans.
And have you had a chance to review the administrative comments of the board professionals that we received, that we went over the weekend, and then we also had the HPC, the Historic Preservation Commission's report today as well?
Yes, and they are in agreement. We remain to be guided by the township and our architect, and we'd love to, make it as close to whatever is in line with the neighborhood. Yeah.
Right, and then with regard to those comments, you'll be guided by the comments of Ann Sears, and Ann Sears, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, is the architect on behalf of the Voras, and she's available and will be called to testify after the Voras. I have nothing further of the applicants, but would submit them to the questioning of the board.
Mr. Dower, Mr. Snickis, any questions for the applicants?
Not at this time.
No questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Any questions from members of the board of the applicants? Okay. Any questions from members of the interested public for the applicants? Okay. And Mr. Weber, you may proceed.
I would ask that Ann Sears be called to the stand, be sworn in to give testimony in this matter.
Hello, my name is Ann Sears.
You could
Shall I
please
proceed?
raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
And please state your name, spell your last name.
Ann Sears, S-E-A-R-S, of Sparta, New Jersey. Shall I go ahead with the information regarding my background?
Please.
Well, let me.
Your background, experience, and 3 boards you've recently appeared before.
Yes. Okay. I graduated from Pratt Institute in 1991. I've had my own architectural firm since 2000. I have been in front of numerous boards throughout the state, namely Frankfurt Township, most recently Sparta Township, and Chatham, Borough of Chatham, to name 3. I work out of my home in Sparta, New Jersey, and currently I'm actually in Montana. So I'm chiming in from the farthest distance, I imagine.
And I may have missed it, but your license as an architect, I imagine, is in good standing?
It is in good standing, correct.
Thank you. I'm guessing at this point, the board would like to accept your credentials as a licensed architect.
You will, but I'm a little jealous you're in Montana. But anyhow, you can continue.
Ms. Sears, are you familiar with the application that's currently pending before the board?
I am very familiar.
And how did you achieve that familiarity?
The Vors hired me as their architect to initially look at the renovations and expansion for their home, and I helped guide them through the design that we're currently presenting. I think that Jim pointed out some of the key elements that we try to attain. One of my goals typically is not to, if we have to seek a variance, I'm trying to minimize the massing effect. So rather than put a giant rectangular box on the second floor and not have any first floor roofs, we tried to minimize that by allowing some lower roofs to mix with upper roofs and not have a unilateral mass, make it, have some corners and take the scaling down.
May I interrupt for a second, Ms. Sears? Perhaps, Mr. Nicola, you could pull up the elevations that Ms. Sears has submitted to the board as part of this application. And Ms. Sears, you talked about the roof line.
Right.
So what is it that you were talking about with regard to, rather than having a block, you're trying to continue to mirror the roof line?
Well, we utilize the existing style of the home, which does also, it's very similar to the previous application with a hip roof, which is consistent on the right side of the house, and we've brought that in on the left side. And when I talk about minimizing massing, if you've noticed in the left side where the second story addition is, it's set back a foot from the first floor front wall so that it has a little roof over those front windows in the front. And the bedroom area in the front, it comes forward, and then where the stair elevation is in the back, it has turned a corner. So it has a little bit of a change in massing.
So when you're talking about that, you're talking about the upper left-hand corner of the plans you prepared for the proposed front elevation. And you're talking about articulation that you've achieved by the setback of the addition by assuring that it doesn't sit flat and on the face, but does have that setback.
Correct.
And
so it's it adds a little more architectural detail to the massing.
And one of the points that was particularly of note was in the lower right-hand corner of your elevations, the proposed rear elevation. And there you show a breezeway. Now, that breezeway is the row of windows that's correct. On the left-hand side, and that's behind the garage. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then the garage doors, and now we're looking at, again, the proposed front elevation. You're showing these to be more of an architectural interest. Is that correct?
Correct.
And in talking with the Voras would make the representation to the board that the home that the board sees that will be constructed will be substantially similar to that which is shown. And so that has to be clarified, Ms. Sears, and that in fact, we're going to have the level of architectural detail that we're seeing here.
Correct.
I interrupted. We were talking about the elevations, and I wanted to point out the creativity that you had in dealing with the split level home. In terms of the proposed master suite, where is that? Is that on the first page, I believe?
It is. It's on the first sheet. Yep.
And is that shown in the lower left-hand corner?
It is in the lower left-hand corner. Correct.
So, Chris, if we could scroll down there, thank you. And this is the extent of the additional area that's being constructed with this home. Is that correct?
Correct. This is the new addition. Correct. And it is to walk you through it in a split level. We have stairs, so we will be coming up the stairs and we're landing in a headroom, landing in a hallway. And one of the features that they've added, because they do appreciate the arboretum in the backyard, is they wanted to have doors they could open, that there will be no balcony. It would just be doors opening to view and enjoy the arboretum in the backyard. Coming into the master suite, they have a modest size master bedroom with all of the features. It does, it's not overly large. It's just, I feel, the right size for the scale addition. The closet too is a nice walk-in closet size, but it's not, I don't think it's anything outlandish for the neighborhood. It's a modest walk-in closet and again, a decent sized master bedroom area, all consistent with what I would say the neighborhood carries. If you wanted to go back to the first floor, we could walk through the first floor plan to get an idea.
It's all right with me. I think that at this point, I had indicated, oh, by the way, we were eliminating the one variance with regard to the garage in order to avoid that variance, eliminating that bump out. Is that your representation to the board as well?
Yes, it is. We've already, but prior to even seeing Krista's latest comments, we had removed that bump out in that garage area and straightened that wall to go directly across.
Have you also had an opportunity to review the administrative reports of the board professionals?
I have.
And one of the reports was from the Environmental Commission, where they're asking that in the construction, that consideration be given to using permeable pavers, consideration given to solar power. And I believe, and the other consideration that during construction, that there would be the use of native plants. On behalf of the Voras, can you agree to that as a condition of approval?
I would say that that's consistent with what their plan is, yes.
And then I'm just for a minute pausing while I remember Mr. Dewar's comments. One dealt with the storm sewer, that there would be confirmation and examination of the adequacy of the inlets at that point. And you didn't have any comments with regard to that, did you, as an architect?
No, I mean, I think that could be followed up with engineering, but I think that they're existing and they seem to be in working order as far as my inspection.
Well, we're agreeing to the representation to the board that should the board approve the application, it will be subject to to compliance with the report of the board engineer. And then what is going on? As these may be within the city easement, right now I'm reading from the report of Mr. Dewar dated April 15th, 2021, page 2 of 3, paragraph 7. As these may be within the city easement, the applicant shall confirm with the city that the proposed work will not negatively impact any city improvements and shall coordinate these activities with the city. Will you, in fact, on behalf of the Voras, indicate that there will be a coordination with the city because of the city improvements in that easement?
I agree with that statement.
And then with regard to the air conditioning and the generator units that are on the side, right now, I believe that if we look at the site plan existing, they show 6. He has asked, how far setback is the air conditioning condenser from that sideline? Can you advise the board as to the distance? We see that.
Yes, I would say it's 11 feet from the side yard right now. I could pull it up if you want me to give you a clearer.
We can ask whether or not Mr. Dewar and the board finds that your representation of 11 feet is acceptable without the need to spend more time on it. The representation, it will be made, Mr. Spur, Mr. Chairman, and members of the board, that if the Voras do install a generator, it will be consistent with the ordinance of the city of Summit. And would the board accept the estimate as to the distance of Ms. Sears? If so, then I would have no further questions and would submit Ms. Sears to the questioning of the board.
I have no question, though I'm going to hand it over to Dower to correct me if I'm erred.
Oh, I think Mr. Weber's covered everything and I have no further questions.
Wonderful. Mr. Sneckis, any questions for the architect?
Regarding the breezeway that's proposed, it's a portion of the garage as it exists today?
As it exists today, it's actually not part of the garage. There's a wall currently that runs across the face. And it's, I think the prior owners had maybe a photography studio wood shop in there, but it was finished. There are walls. It is not just unfinished space.
Okay, so it's currently finished and you're just calling it the breezeway, and that's what's also being
Currently,
contributed to the
yes.
FAR. Okay. Thank you.
Correct.
No further questions.
Any questions from members of the board? Searching and seeing none. Any questions from members of the public for this witness? Seeing none. Mr. Weber, any further witnesses for you?
Nothing further, Mr. Chair. Now I would submit the application to the approval of the board.
Okay, and I'll similarly scan one more time for any public comment on the application. Hearing and seeing none. All right, Mr. Ball, what conditions do we have attached to this application?
The only one I have noted is compliance with all the conditions noted in the engineer's report.
Very well. Let's open deliberations. Mr. Mullen gets a pass this time. Who'd like to start us? Oh, Chris, sorry.
We have one hand raised.
Oh, do we? Which hand is this?
It is iPad, no name.
iPad. iPad, if you want to hop
Am
off
I
mute
unmuted?
identifiers.
Am
You are
I unmuted?
unmuted. Can we get some video too? Sorry if I'm just missing you
I
here.
thought I was on video.
You are.
He is.
Okay. All right. Would you state your name and address for the record?
Sure. Mark, M-A-R-K, middle initial J, Nelson, N-E-L-S-O-N, 36 Londonderry Way.
Andy, you need to swear him in?
Yes, I will. If you could please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. I have, I guess I was described glowingly as the lovely neighbor next door. They are lovely, lovely people. I can't see any negative impact that this application would have on the neighborhood, on the city of Summit, and only a positive impact on the neighborhood and the city. So my wife and I are fully in support, where the neighbor is to the, if you're facing the house, to the left. So we're fully in support. I think it's it would only enhance the neighborhood and enhance the town.
Wonderful. Thank you. I see why you've earned the title lovely neighbor. So thank you very much for joining.
I had to testify once I heard I was the lovely neighbor. So I couldn't just remain silent once I heard that.
No, that's wonderful. Thank you for taking the moment to join.
And they're lovely people.
Absolutely. All right. I think that's it for public comments. Andy, conditions was just the engineer's letter.
That's all
we're cool. All right, let's move to deliberations. Did I hear Claire chime in? Did Claire want to start us off?
Oh, I was just going to help with the neighbor, but yeah, I certainly can support this recommendation. The house the lot is clearly undersized for the neighborhood. I enjoyed learning a little bit about Indian architectural principles. So that was fun. And I think the architect has done a good job of not making the split level look like you just keep building one on top of the other as the alternate sides rise up. So I can support this application.
Okay. Any further comment from members of the board? Mr. Steiner, you still awake?
Yep, I'm still here.
Okay, all right. All right, hearing and
If
seeing.
you want me to say something, I agree with the iPad.
Okay, Mr. Steiner is in favor of the application. All right. I too, for the reasons that Ms. Toth articulated. It's a very modest request, thoughtfully scaled, and especially due to its proximity to a summit gem, the Reeves Arboretum. We appreciate the time and effort that's been undertaken to so thoughtfully prepare the architecture of this plan. So with that, I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
All right, we'll give the motion to Claire and the second to Mr. Steiner. Chris, will you give us a roll?
Sure. Vice Chairwoman Newell,
Yes.
Mr. Steiner,
Yes.
Mr. Mullen,
Yes.
Mr. Malay,
Yes.
Ms. Toth,
Yes.
Ms. Sager,
Yes.
and Chairman Spur.
Yes. All right. Thank you very much,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Weber. Mr. Vora. Thank you. All right, Michelle, are you okay to continue for a little longer here for the third case?
Sure.
Okay. All right. Let's continue through the third case, Claremont Corporate Center, 535 Springfield Avenue, and then I promise a brief recess after that. Welcome back, Mr. Yuko and Dr. Levine.
Mr. Chairman, may I begin?
You may, Mr. Sheehan. Welcome.
May I make a request to confirm that my witnesses have logged in and to inquire as to whether or not there are any members of the interested public who have also logged in.
All right, who are we looking for, Mr. Sheehan, for your witnesses? Yep.
Yeah, Paul Newman,
Paul Newman, the architect.
Tom Salaki,
Present.
and not least,
Chris Adams.
Chris Adams. Chris Adams is here. Yes, and any members of the interested public logged on, Mr. Chairman?
Anyone, you can wave your hand nod approvingly if you're here for this application, 535 Springfield Avenue. Just so we know to look for you. I don't see any motion, but we'll check in Mr. Sheehan periodically in case someone does join.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, for the record, it's Bartholomew A. Sheehan Jr. Of Dempsey, and Sheehan, appearing on behalf of the applicant for the property located at 535 Springfield Avenue. This property, as many of the board members, certainly Mr. Steiner, will remember, is the estate building of Dr. Risk. It is a Richardson Romanesque gem that was modified with the approval of this board to preserve the historic architectural property and add an office building to it to the north side. That application was granted in 2007. The application in 2007, although it called for 2 freestanding signs, and as noted in the resolution, the application took over 4 meetings. Many of the meetings were consumed with traffic testimony, and ultimately the board approved plans that reflected 3 freestanding signs, one at the entrance on Springfield Avenue, a second at the entrance and exit on Morris Avenue, and a third freestanding tenant identification and site location V-shaped sign in the front of the Springfield and Morris corner. The application this evening has as its purpose to improve handicapped access and to eliminate the existing handicapped access ramp and relocate the existing handicap parking space to the interior of the building in close proximity to the elevator. In addition to improving handicapped access, the application seeks to improve the streetscape aesthetics by improving in a substantial way the existing landscaping program. And finally, the application seeks to amend the prior approval to slightly modify the previously approved signage in promotion of public safety. This site in conventional times is located at one of the 3 or 4 busiest intersections in the city of Summit, directly across from City Hall at the corner of Morris Avenue and Springfield Avenue. I have 3 witnesses this evening. John Newman as architect, Chris Adams as sign designer, and Tom Salaki as the landscape architect. Because Mr. Barkin and Mr. Weber have set such a heavy standard in terms of the speed with which they process their application, it would be my intention to present the first two witnesses and to have Mr. Salaki confirm a willingness to have the landscape plan approved by the city forester and respond to any questions that the board might have. I don't think that the application needs to be drawn out in that regard, but should the board wish it, Mr. Salaki is available to give extensive testimony. If there are any questions of the board or board professionals at this time, I would be glad to try and answer them. If not, I would propose to call the first witness, Mr. John Newman.
Questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr.
before we
Steiner.
go further, Mr. Sheehan's commentary brings back some memories. I don't think I was involved in the case, but I know I was involved in the building and some issues there. So I think it's best that I withdraw from this.
Okay, we'll recognize Mr. Steiner as having recused from this application. Thank you, Mr. Steiner. You can hop off video. Thank you. Any questions from members of the board or our board professionals for Mr. Sheehan before we proceed to their first witness? All right, hearing and seeing none, Mr. Sheehan, you may proceed, and appreciate your adherence to that standard of rapidity this evening, but still the high quality of our board, if you can.
All right. Mr. Nicola, I would ask that you invite Mr. John Newman to the platform to be sworn to give testimony in this matter.
All right, Mr. Newman, if you could please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And please state your name, spell your last name.
My name is Paul Newman, and it's spelled Newman.
Thank you. And could you please give us briefly your background, experience, and 3 boards you've recently appeared before, aside from Summit?
Sure. I'm a practicing architect in the state of New Jersey. I've been licensed since 1989. I am a graduate of NJIT. I have a practice which is based in Harding, New Jersey. The name of it is Kimberly Newman Architects. And the 3 most recent boards I've been at are Nutley, West Essex, and Madison Township.
Thank you. And unless there's any questions, the board will likely accept your credentials as an architect.
Welcome, Mr. Newman. You may proceed.
All right, Mr. Newman, I begin with an apology. I think I have been calling you John Newman, an eminent judge in Morris County for a number of years. And I realize that, in fact, you are Paul Newman. And in that capacity, are you
want to talk about my movies or my salad dressing? Whatever.
In that capacity, are you the architect for the project at 535 Springfield Avenue that is the subject of this application?
Yes, I am.
Describe the instructions you received from the owners of the site in regard to the preparation for this application.
Sure. We were asked to look at 3 things regarding the exterior of the property. The first was to look at the ADA parking, and specifically, though, the ADA ramp that's on the front of the building. There was a concern about the size and complexity of it and whether it made sense where it was. The second thing was to do something about the front image of the building related to that and improve the overall landscaping on the front of the building. And then the third item was to look at the signage, because there was concern about the safety aspect of it. As you know, and as Bart previously described, there's always been an issue with this, how you turn in and out of the building. So the signage component was considered important part of this to be looked at.
Right now, Mr. Newman, what professional contacts were employed to assist you in the presentation and development of this project?
We worked with the landscape architect, Tom Salaki of Acre 2, and also Chris Adams, who works for the signage company that has been involved in the project. And then also I talked specifically with the ADA consultants down at the DCA to look at what the conditions on the property were and how we can modify those.
All right, what is proposed by the plan revisions that have been submitted? And I invite Mr. DeCola or you to share the screen with the Kimberly Newman plan that it was submitted in connection with this that you would wish to use.
Right. If someone can bring up C2, or I can do it, which is easier.
You might be able to find it faster than me.
Okay. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. So let me get it leveled off.
Yep.
Enlarge it just a little bit here. Okay. So overall on the site plan that you see right here, this is actually Springfield Avenue, police station right across the street. That's the traffic light at the corner, right? And Morris Avenue over here. So the condition we specifically looked at was when you go into this small visitor parking lot in the front area right here. Immediately adjacent to that, you're probably familiar with it, there's a steep set of stairs that goes up right here to the main atrium entryway. And then there's a long sort of ramped set of steps that go up in this area. It's not a ramp, it's more a matter of long landings and single individual steps. In addition, there's a very complex back and forth ramp that winds around this whole area. And that's because the pitch from this area up to the landing level of the atrium level is quite high, requiring a fairly lengthy riser in the 1 to 12 range for ramping. And the problem has always been with this area is that if someone actually pulls in and occupies this ADA spot right here, there's a striped area immediately adjacent to it where they can offload and then go up a small ramp here. And then at this point, they have a choice. They can either go up this ramp right here, which is quite long and lengthy, and in inclement weather or icy conditions, definitely present some hazardous conditions. The alternative is they can actually go out this way and just go on a relatively flat, gently sloping area right down to the underside of the entry to the garage. And immediately upon this location right here is the front entry to the garage that goes underneath the building, 2-level parking deck. Immediately upon entering this area, there is an ADA spot there and an elevator right there that goes immediately up to the atrium. So, and there at the back of the building, there are also a couple of ADA spots back here, which go along this area and into the back of the building. Now, the way this building is situated, both entries have a similar level of importance in terms of going in and out because, you know, folks coming in the back area, there's an elevator right here. There's a set of stairs that go in, and it goes up and down in all levels of the building. However, this is perceived as the main entry of the building, I would say from a visual perspective, and because it's connected to the Risk House. What we really looked at and said, you know, this is actually not a great condition for an ADA entryway. It presents several problems in terms of length, in terms of the fact that it's completely exposed the whole time, and that there's really, it's quite a long trip. And it's also not that clear how exactly you get up to this area. Whereas if someone pulls down into this area and has an assigned, has an ADA spot, it's very clear, it's right there. They can get out of their car and instantly go into the, I'm gonna pull down to show that level. They can pull right into this spot right here or this spot right here and then get out of the car, and the elevator is right there. There's no vestibule. There's nothing impairing the folks from getting into the building at that point, and go straight up into the main lobby at that point. So what we suggested was we eliminate that spot outside that's we consider somewhat hazardous and not at all ADA friendly, and actually bring it into the bring a second spot down to this level. Just so you're aware of it, there's 2 levels to this parking lot. There's a lower level and an upper level. So each one of them has ADA spots. So at this level, there's an ADA spot. Same thing. You can get off, go right into the elevator, go right to the main lobby, And we're saying on this level, we're going to add a second parking spot and actually make it so there'll be 2 spots at this location. Now, what we're proposing to do here is not to eliminate any spots, but simply to take one spot and stripe it, and the other spot becomes the ADA spot. And then on the exterior, reverse it. Just make this two regular spots at this point. So someone who parking here can go up into the building. We
So,
consider this a
Mr.
much safe. Oh, sorry, you were going to ask a question?
Yeah, Mr. Newman, based on your experience and your knowledge of ADA requirements, is this a significantly improved ADA accessibility plan?
It is. It actually makes it much easier for someone to get into the building and still brings them to the front door of the building, which is one of the crucial components of ADAs, to not make someone feel like they're a second-class citizen, but to make them feel that they're just as important as anybody else coming into the building. This will actually enhance their experience and make it a safer experience for them. So that's what we're proposing to do on the parking.
As an architect, Mr. Newman, can you offer an opinion as to what impact on the aesthetic and the integrity of the architecture of the building the removal of the handicapped access ramp and area has?
It'll actually greatly improve the aesthetics of the building. There's this whole area out in front has a very complicated set of railings that run around it for naturally because it requires them, and makes this sort of a very complicated, kind of unattractive looking entry to the building. I remember the first time I saw the building very long time ago, but when I first got involved with it, I was surprised actually that they had created this ramp, making it so complicated. And instead of having this whole ramp with all the railings and everything on it, now we can actually landscape this whole area, make it a lot greener and just a lot more attractive. And since it does have such a major impact visually on the intersection right here, that's what you see from the front of the building. We believe it'll actually really enhance the view of the Risk building, the original mansion at this point.
And the landscaping is within the province of Mr. Salaki, is that correct?
That's correct. He can
Right.
expound further. It's pretty extensive what they're proposing in a good way.
Now, before leaving, I would ask you, recognizing that Mr. Adams is the next witness on the signage, just to identify where the existing signage and proposed signage will be in the existing and proposed plan.
Will do. So the primary signage for the building in terms of designating the tenant signs is in this V-shaped signage component, which is on the corner, and that's a small brick stone wall, which the stone on it actually is meant to match the house and the mansion, and then the sign extends in these two viewpoints, and the proposed renovation of that sign is in the exact same spot. It's not changing it at all. It's Chris can explain further. So that's the primary sign location. The second sign location is on Springfield Avenue, which is located right here. And the idea is that this is to identify anybody driving in either direction on Springfield Avenue where to make the turn into the building at this location. That's looking to be placed right here on a parallel to the Springfield Avenue location. And then the third location is back here at the Morris Avenue entry into the, hesitate to call it the rear of the building, but the other elevation of the building, which leads you into both the rear entry point as well as the other entry into the parking garage. So that's to be located right here. And the recommendation on this one is to be placed so that it's perpendicular to the road, so it's visible from both driving directions. Chris will explain further on each of these.
Now, Mr. Newman, before you leave, I'd like to go through the administrative reviews that pertain to your area of discipline and ask you to confirm that the parking count remains at 138 total spaces with 5 ADA spaces.
That is correct. It's staying exactly the same. We're just relocating the spots.
All right, and it is your testimony that the handicapped access plan complies with all applicable regulations.
It does.
Can you confirm that there is no additional on-site lighting proposed by this modification?
No, there are no modifications proposed for any of the lighting on site.
All of the rest of the engineering comments can be carried as conditions of approval, correct?
Yes, where every other comment is fine.
All right, and then moving to the planner's review. I ask you whether or not in preparing for your testimony, preparing for your commission and your design, did you review the previous plans approved by the Board of Adjustment in 2007?
I did, yes.
And do they in fact confirm approval of 3 freestanding signs?
Yes, they did have 3 signs on the final approved plan.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I have no further questions of this witness and would submit him to the examination of the board.
I could, there was one oddball comment in the planning report I just wanted to address. Item 6, the applicant shall provide testimony regarding the notation not, quote, not spot listed in the parking counts. Just for clarification, when I was describing in the ADA report of the parking spots, I described an adjacent spot that was striped, meaning every ADA spot adjacent to it has a striped spot for walking or movement access. That's what I was referring to as it's not a spot.
Thank you for that clarification. Mr. Chairman, I would submit the witness to the examination of the members of the board and interested public.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Newman, for your clarification on the oddball comment. Mr. Sneckis, anything further you'd like to add or?
No, nothing further. Most of my questions will be for the sign expert.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Dower, any questions?
I did have a question regarding the ADA access. So we talked about the main entrance coming in off of Springfield Avenue. Right now, and I totally agree that the entrance to the ADA space that's outside of just in from Springfield Avenue is cumbersome at best for anybody to wield their way or find their way through to the front entrance. But right now you have 2 ADA spaces that are coming in off of that entrance. You're going to reduce that to 1. And
there's only a single spot in the front of the visitor.
Right. But you have one on the inside and one on the outside. So there's 2 spaces accessible from Springfield Avenue. You're reducing it by 1. Even though the count will remain the same, you're moving that to the lower level. And I was just wondering whether or not that meets the intent of the ADA requirements for access. And I don't really know, I don't know if anybody knows which access point, whether it's Springfield or Morris, is more commonly used by the public and by the employees.
That's a good question, and that's one of the things that we considered actually. In terms of what level to put that on. In talking with the property management person and the building engineer who have been there obviously almost on a daily basis, the general feeling was many more people come in the other entryway, not the front entry on Springfield. They come in off Morris Avenue because that sort of seems to be the principal amount of travel, which means when they come in, they're more likely to go to the lower level from the back entryway. And that's what was part of the determination of where which level to put it at based on most frequent usage.
Okay. I also actually thought whether or not there could be some change in the traffic flow so that the upper level would mirror the lower level. But I do see an advantage on the upper level to having the access lane right alongside by where the elevator is, in the event, which I'm sure it's used fairly often, that someone would want to double park there temporarily, drop somebody off so they have access. So I think that given that that's kind of an overriding design, and I think it should remain. So I think I tend to agree that this is probably the best thing that can happen as far as the proposed design, and the elimination of that parking space, the ADA ramp in the front is, I think, a long time coming. So I have no further questions.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dower. Any questions from members of the board for this witness? I see Claire's raising her hand. Claire, go for it.
Sorry, trying to unmute myself in the wrong spot. I appreciate, the intent with the ADA. I'm no expert here, but I did have some questions about it. You had said you had consulted with some specialists. Could you expand on some of that?
Sure. I've been around since, the New Jersey barrier-free code. So
Okay.
We've always been very cognizant of this, work very closely with many code officials and building departments in New Jersey over many years, and narrowing down, what is the proper ADA spaces. I did my research on this building, and my observations, over many years. I've been in this building and in tenants on it for many years. I've been watching the conditions and how people drive in and out, et cetera. What I did was I took my interpretations, and the Department of Community Affairs, which is the overriding licensing group for New Jersey Building Code, they have folks down there who you can talk to and explain what you're proposing to do, and check with them to make sure that my interpretation is as correct as it can be. And they were actually in agreement with me, and were actually surprised when I showed them the condition of where this spot had been put. We're actually surprised that had been, the initial location, and agreed with me that moving it inside made a lot of sense, both particularly from a safety and protection aspect of it, that people aren't crossing into an area, which commonly happen here, that I've seen people actually pull up on a cane or something and start walking this way or start moving this way, and then realize they don't want to go up those stairs, and they keep on going here. But what it means is they're crossing behind all these other cars. That's been a common occurrence. That was one of the things we really were concerned about and wanted to prevent.
And you spoke about how moving the spot gives direct access to the front door of the building. I haven't been in the building since 2008. So, I'll tell you where I'm really going is, here's our hypothetical. A group of 3 or 4 employees want to walk to Winberry's for lunch, or go out there without using cars, and one of them's in a wheelchair. How is this working?
What they'll do is they'll come down here to the elevator, get into an open protected area here, which is curved, a platform area. Then they can move out here on an ADA path, and then they would actually go up through this area right here. They would go along this driveway out to the sidewalk, or they could, in addition, they could come down the rear entry point from the elevator and come out in that area, and also come out to the sidewalk on that side.
Yeah, but it seemed like quite a ramp up from the parking garage.
It's actually not. The grade change from here to here, very, very minor.
Okay.
Just the grade change from here to the entry point up here is almost twice as much. You can see all the steps that go up there. Yeah. That was one of the things that really struck me was, wow, this is almost flat from here to here, which is why people would want to go that way, versus this, which is quite an endurathon to get to the top of that. If you just walk up that ramp, by the time you get to the top, you're like, wow, that was a long way to go because of all the winding lanes on it.
No, I agree. It's not particularly, it's not the best solution, but I'm with you on not wanting anybody to feel like a second-class citizen.
That's a big part of it, right?
Yeah. Okay.
You had a clarification. I just wanted to follow up on Ms. Toth's hypothetical. So in that situation, the party is going to come through the garage along a path. Does that are they then going to have to roll through the parking lot?
No, what they can do is they can come out and they come right around here and get right onto the sidewalk, and they can be on a sidewalk coming right along this whole front area right here.
Okay, that's helpful. And let's say
a problem for someone right now, they come out, they go this way, they start heading over here, and then they start to realize, well, wait a minute, where do I go? Do I go on this? Like there's so many, it's confusing to people. Whereas now it'll be very clear and easy, and it'll make sense for them.
And along those lines, that's the designated visitor parking lot. So if a disabled visitor were to come into the Springfield Avenue entrance, would there be some signage indicating where the accessible parking is located?
Yes, we're actually proposing to have something right by the garage entry point right here that tells people to go in right there and they can park immediately upon entering that area. Small directional sign.
I don't know if we need to have a condition, something acceptable to the code official about the location on the signage, but
that's
defer to Mr.
fine.
Ball on that.
That'd be acceptable to the applicant, Mr. Chairman.
Great, thank you.
All right, any other questions from members of the board for this witness? All right, hearing and seeing none, Mr. Sheehan, if you'd like to proceed to your next witness.
Thank you. I would ask that the testimony of Christopher Adams be given in this matter, and that he be admitted to the platform to be sworn for that purpose.
And Mr. Adams, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And please state your name, spell your last name.
Well, my name is Chris Adams. That's Adams. And I'm the owner / partner of Adams Ahern Sign Solutions. 26 years now in Greater Hartford. And prior to that, I spent 10 years in a previous sign company. So I've basically got 35 years sign industry. My focus has been on wayfinding and institutional properties like hospitals and corporate office parks and a lot of college campuses, that sort of thing.
Roughly for the board's edification, Mr. Adams, how many commercial office buildings have you been involved with over the period of time that you've been in business?
It'd be very hard to count for 2 or 3 of our major clients. Sometimes there's 15 or 20 buildings as part of their office parks. A couple of those people that I've worked for, I don't know how well they'll be known in New Jersey, but in Greater Hartford, Greater Boston, Greater New York, KS Partners is one of them. New Boston Partners is another. Certainly Normandy Real Estate Partners, which are associated with this particular application right now. We did 13 of their office buildings in Westchester, inside and out, interior signage planning, bringing to boards, bringing up to ADA standards, and we continue to work with all of them on those buildings.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I would submit that Mr. Adams is qualified to testify as a signage design expert, not only in the field of graphic design, but in the field of public safety, would submit him to the examination of the board, members of the interested public on his qualifications, and in the absence of any issues, would ask that he be moved.
I agree and welcome Mr. Adams. You may proceed, Mr. Sheehan.
All right. Mr. Adams, Mr. Ball, has Mr. Adams been sworn?
Yes, he has.
Thank you. Mr. Adams, can you share your plan and take the board through the existing signing and proposed signage that is the subject of this application?
Sure. I'd like to request that the landscape and sign plan that was part of this submittal be brought up. By the way, I think I forgot to state my last 3 board presentations. They were Pelham, New York, Larchmont, New York, and Dedham, Massachusetts.
Well,
all wonderful towns.
New Jersey. If you're going to pinch hit for the Boston Red Sox, they might be important. So is this is not what you are looking for, is it?
Well, this will do for actually for existing and proposed. So I will. I think everybody's familiar with this site, so hopefully just my voice will make it clear what we're talking about. That let's start on the upper right-hand corner. There's no sign currently there, but I did find in Google Earth both historical satellite and for about 5 days when I started on this project, an actual street view of the sign that was there, because the date of the picture taken was maybe 2016, 2017. But that's no longer there. They've updated things, but there definitely was a sign there, and I do have pictures of it, although I don't have them to share. But I know that the sign was there. That sign,
Mr. Adams, that was a sign that was previously approved and included in the 2007 Keller and Kirkpatrick site plan, correct?
That is correct, and I do not know why it was removed, and I did not have any part of manufacturing or installing any of these signs, so I don't have historical knowledge that way. But anyways, that's where that entry sign is going to go. And
now, wait a minute, Mr. Adams, please. That sign, as it was originally installed and shown on the plan, was perpendicular, correct?
It was. Now,
right. Maybe as you get into the next phase of your testimony and start to describe the proposed sign, we might find out why it was removed.
Sure. So then just to finish up, down there in the lower right-hand corner, that's the existing masonry sign. It is remaining as it is. We found that the base was sufficient enough to support a sign. We didn't like the fact that the sign was only 2 feet high, and the previous signs were basically about 6 inches off the ground to the bottom, and no more than about 20 inches to the top. So our plan was to put a replacement sign up on top of it, but try to minimize the impact and the need for a zoning variance by making it align with what the zoning regulations are for height. There's also existing ground spots there. In fact, you can't even see them because they're the type that are recessed into the ground, but there's 2 in the front of each street facing part of the sign. Those are going to remain. There's no internal illumination for this sign. And as you'll see on another drawing, that the sign is made to be have a multi-tenant directory for current and potentially 3 additional tenants if needed.
Right now, what was the third sign existing?
So the third sign is up there on the lower left side of the drawing, and it was originally in a spot closer to the street, but when construction was done, in other words, it was originally approved for that area right there, exactly. And when they made the extra island in the middle to force the right turn only, that sign was moved to the location that it's at now, and we're proposing to put our new sign in the exact same location. And at this point, I will point out that setback, the configuration of the property there allows for that setback. It's being further away than the previous one was, and I actually prefer it there too, because it means that the sign where it would have been almost exactly parallel with the stop bar that comes across there means that there could have been some potential obstruction of the sight line for lower cars, not necessarily for the larger vehicles, but because the signs are at the proposed maximum of 4 feet high.
Right now, Mr. Adams, before we move to the actual sign plan itself, in summary, on the east side of the property location, there was a perpendicular sign at the entranceway that is being replaced in virtually the same location with a proposed sign in this application, correct?
Correct.
And there is currently a V-shaped masonry sign that is going to remain in place, that is currently illuminated with 2 spotlights on the ground, that there is no change proposed in the illumination for that sign, correct?
Correct.
And with regard to the sign on the north side entrance on Morris Avenue, the original third sign, the original third freestanding sign shown on the original 2007 site plan of Keller and Kirkpatrick that was the subject of the approval was removed when the driveway was flared to accommodate the teardrop to require a right turn only exiting from that driveway, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And you are replacing that with a sign that is proposed to be set back at 20 plus feet as opposed to the original location, which was approximately 14 feet and change.
That's correct. Both of the original approvals were for signs that were 14 feet approximately from the curb, and on this Morris Avenue frontage, the sign will be 20 feet 6 inches from the curb.
All right, let's ask the secretary or ask you to share your screen with your drawing of L201, the landscaping and signage layout plan. All right, thank you, Mr. Nicola. Now, Mr. Adams, having summarized the existing conditions, please take us through the specifics of the proposed signs, beginning first with the entrance signage on Springfield Avenue in the easterly corner of the property.
Okay, I will. I wonder first, do we want to look at what the sign looks like? Which is on the, I believe, the second page of this landscaping plan, or the third. It's one of those two. There we go. Thank you. So the signs that we're talking about now are going to be the one that says street front sign, 535 Springfield Avenue. And there they are. They are 36 inches wide. They are at the 4 foot high. They have a base that basically reflects the or references the freestanding sign that is the main sign, and then they have an actual signage with graphics on them above a reveal that has the lettering as you see here, stating the address. Now, on that location that is at that easterly area, that sign, possibly by an abundance of caution, but I felt that it was wiser that given the extreme short distance between the curb and the parking lot where the first car parks there, that the sign couldn't be set back far enough to have a decent clear view. And given the way it's mimicking the rest of the sign designs, that it was wiser to turn it so that it was parallel to the street. I realize that gives it a little bit less visibility to a car that might want to turn in, although it is still visible. But it definitely would prevent having a slightly obscured sight line from an exiting car. My most most of my concern was about a bicycle or pedestrians on the sidewalk rather than a vehicle approaching, which would have a much more of an angled view. So that's the reason why I've turned that in that non-perpendicular direction.
Right, and what is the material of that sign
Okay,
proposed?
all of the signs are constructed in the same manner. They have aluminum angled welded frames internally that are all also welded to the posts that will go into the ground. And then they are covered with a skin of 1/8" aluminum that is painted with a color that's actually called brushed aluminum. And then they are lettered with high performance exterior grade 3M vinyl graphics.
And the graphics of the size of those signs are conforming, correct?
Oh, yes, indeed. As far as being of not larger than are permitted by the town.
Both as to the signage and the lettering, correct?
Correct.
Right now, would you please go to the proposed sign for the location at the entrance on Morris Avenue on the north side of the property?
Okay, so basically it's the exact same sign, only in this case, we do have the ability to set that back far enough from the exiting vehicle to still have it be seen by cars that are going up and down Morris Avenue, but not have it have any potential for blocking. It's just off outside of view here, but basically the stop line is right at the sidewalk. So you can see the distance from where the sign is proposed to be put. It's where the existing sign is now. And it also is a good deal of a distance away from a person that has stopped at the stop bar and is taking a look to their left to see, to view oncoming traffic.
Now, in your opinion, as an expert in the field of sign design and public safety, can you indicate whether or not the proposed new signage enhances public safety, in your opinion?
I believe it does. It does bring it higher by a foot. I have to say, I don't know the size of the current lettering, but our 5-inch letter here emphasizing the number is definitely has a decent visibility over a range. The charts that we normally use for determining how far away you can see something that was originally developed by the California Institute of Technology states that a 5-inch letter has a maximum impact at up to 50 feet away, but has the actual ability to be seen from about 175 feet away.
So that the identification sign on the V-shaped sign is something that would be visible from Morris Avenue at the center line and from Springfield Avenue at the center line, in your opinion, correct?
Yes, it would be, basically on the measurements that I made as to how far it is to those center lines. They are, I believe that Morris Avenue is at 44 feet to the center line from the face of the Morris Avenue facing sign, and that the distance for the Springfield Avenue one is about 75 feet.
All right, turning to the administrative reviews, Mr. Adams, may I ask you to confirm that there are no proposed changes to the existing lighting with regard to these signs?
Correct. Once again, we are doing nothing concerning lighting. The signs will be manufactured and installed without any changes to lighting.
All right, and with respect to the planning review that was submitted by Burgess Associates, there was a recommendation that the board, and I quote, consider requiring a similar type of stone that is used throughout the site, including on the existing V-shaped monument sign wall located at the corner of the site on the street facing the intersection for the other directional signage that you have testified to. As a sign designer, do you have any comment or reflection on that suggestion?
Sure. Basically, when we approach putting together signs as part of a system, and I realize this is a relatively small one, there's basically two different types of signs here, but we always have what we call the hierarchy of the sign types that tend to reflect the function of the sign. And certainly in this particular case, we have a main and a secondary sign. There's no tertiary signage, so to speak, although some of it has been discussed already today about, say, directional signage for ADA accessible spots from a parking lot where you wouldn't see that without a sign. But in general here, we always try to make a sign system look exactly that, like a system, like all of the parts are working together towards a whole. So we want to use similar materials, we want to use a similar design style, and we want to use similar colors, and certainly try to extremely limit the type. Typically we use a, we might have one that's a little bit more decorative and one that's much more clear, so that we have the ability to address different concerns. And what we also try to do is not make all the signs look the same. We try to make them reflect the function that they're performing. So our main signs are always more substantial than our secondary signs, and they still have all of those components that make them immediately recognizable as a system, but that will speak to the varying levels of the hierarchy of what they are in the wayfinding on the property.
So, Mr. Adams, you would describe the V-shaped sign as a primary sign in the hierarchy, and the directional signs at the entranceway on Morris and Springfield as secondary signs, and recommend that they not be of the same appearance.
Well, I would certainly say that I think that by having them be distinctively different yet part of the same system speaks to their different functions.
Better said. All right, now, finally, the Historic Preservation Commission making no note of the substantial aesthetic benefit derived with respect to the historic structure from the removal of the handicapped access ramp, asks the question that it is not clear what the elevations of the new signage is. Are not the elevations with dimensions clearly identified on drawing L201?
Oh, I believe they are. I'm not quite sure what was meant by that. Probably, maybe it was that there's no illustrated mock-up of what the sign looks like in its environment. I really don't know, but certainly I did believe that this drawing that was part of the landscaping submittal shows what the sign is supposed to look like and what its sizes are in scale.
Right, I have no further questions of this witness, Mr. Chairman. Would submit him to the examination of the board, the experts, and the members of the interested public.
Thank you, Mr. Sheehan. Mr. Dower, any questions for this witness?
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Schnickis, any questions for this witness?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, just a few. With regard to, you addressed a number of our questions, but yet with regard to the illumination of the, I think you call them street front signs, which are just the address. Are they going to be illuminated, or they're just going to be freestanding, no illumination?
No, there's no illumination on those signs.
Okay. Will the letters themselves be somewhat reflective to light or anything like that?
Well, they could be, because there is black reflective vinyl that could be used, but and if that was a desire, I would certainly be able to do that. But the way they're designed right now is that the brushed aluminum is the background color and black is the text color. And using the more bold font that we're using there, I do believe that'll be high enough contrast. But I'm quite sure that neither me nor my client would have a problem with going with reflective. I will say one thing though is that black reflective isn't black. It will show up white, which means sometimes it can actually limit the contrast in that dusk period of time.
Interesting.
Because then you have basically a white-looking letter on a light-colored background.
Okay, I appreciate that. I was more interested in the contrast, and you identified the fact that you're providing contrast, and that's what's going to be visible in the evening hours. Yes. Okay, so no illumination. But yet, in talking about materials, I know you said it's the brushed aluminum look to the actual street signs, but that at the V sign itself, the panel that's being put above the stone wall, is that going to also be the same aluminum?
It will. I'll describe how that's made. So we're going to make the same type of sign. It's going to have the internal frame for structural support, but then it's going to be covered with a single piece, no seamed of aluminum that will be painted in this brushed aluminum color. And you can see that it's got some little dividers there. Those dividers are a little piece of a J molding. I even have, look at that, I do. I wasn't prepared to do this, but it is right here. I don't know how much you can see here, but it's a brushed aluminum piece, and it has, this is a center one, so that it has, the ability to insert something on both sides. So this would be my center one on those signs there. It's got a very small profile so that it doesn't take away from the readability. And what we do is we use a piece of clear non-glare acrylic, and we put the text on that piece of acrylic so that we don't have to deal with the removal of vinyl letters that tends to start to look sloppy over a period of time. So essentially, it's a clear panel laying on top of the painted panel.
Okay, and that's how you handle tenant changes, the replacing of those panels.
Absolutely.
Okay, and you feel that those panels are large enough to be readable?
Well, I was torn between trying to keep from from needing a variance by increasing the height.
I'm not trying to promote that. I'm just making sure.
And then trying to, balance an owner's need for the ability to have a reasonable number of tenants on the outside. Now, once again, I will point out that when one of those tenants that has their tiny letters and their big logo takes a look at how their sign lays out, I think they'll get rid of that logo and just use their lettering so that they can have a 5 or 6 or 7 inch letter like the other tenants do. And those are the sort of things that we try to point out to people anyways, because we do want them to be seen. That is the purpose.
Okay, thank you. The setbacks of the actual signs that are at the street entrances, they're at the maximum distance they can be relative to the existing site plan configuration, correct?
I believe so. I've put that sign that's parallel, is back far enough so that it can be seen, but so that it won't be so close to a car door opening and hitting it on the curb on the Springfield Avenue side.
And if you tried to provide it at 25 feet, it'd be much greater and would have to be offset from the entrances. So therefore, it's sort of to address the existing conditions.
Yeah, there's no way we could put that and have it be visible, or it'd be in the middle of the parking lot, basically.
Okay. And then possibly maybe this question is for Mr. Sheehan. Just to summarize the variances, I imagine you'll do that in your closing?
Well, Mr. Smakis, I have.
Did we have, maybe I can offer this if I have it correctly. You have the maximum number of freestanding signs. You're trying to carry that over from the prior approval. That's 3.
Yes.
And then the maximum sign area for what's being proposed is a total of 57.6 square feet compared to 30 square feet. And then the minimum sign setbacks for those 2 freestanding signs.
Yeah, yes, and again, all are variations, slight variations on existing conditions that were the subject of the original variance.
Okay, thank you. Nothing further. Just wanted to clarify that for the board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions from members of the board for this witness? Okay, hearing and seeing any questions from the interested public. Okay, seeing none. All right, Mr. Sheen, I understand you have one other witness, but I believe from your earlier remarks, if we simply as a condition of approval review and approval of a landscaping plan by Mr. Linson, that may be an adequate substitute for hearing this additional testimony.
If the board chooses, we can have Mr. Solaki sworn and respond to questions if there are any. If there are none, that would be an acceptable condition.
Okay. Any objection from members of the board proceeding without this witness's testimony? Okay. Well, Mr. Ball, if you'll just note again as a condition that we would seek a submission and approval of a landscaping plan by Mr. Linson. Thank you, Mr. Sheen, for your flexibility.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant has no further witnesses and would respond to any questions from the board, members of the interested public, or public comment at this time.
Okay. With that, barring any further questions from our board professionals, board members, I would open it to the interested public for any comments. Hearing and seeing none. All right, Mr. Ball, I believe our only condition is the landscaping plan, but what else do we have?
There was one other, and I would ask Mr. Mullen to clarify about the signage for the handicap parking, whether that was to be submitted to the, I think it was either construction official or code official was contemplated.
Whoever would be the most appropriate party. Having been neither a construction nor code official.
Yeah, probably the code official.
That would be my guess as well. Okay, I guess code official or his designee. So the 3 conditions that I had noted were the usual: compliance with the conditions noted in the engineer's report. Second, as previously noted, was that the applicant shall submit a landscape plan to the city forester for review and approval. And the last was, as we just discussed, that the signage for disabled parking would be submitted to code enforcement or their designee for review and approval.
Thank you, Mr. Ball. With that, let's open deliberations from the board. Who would like to begin?
Begin.
Thank you, Liz.
I really like this plan, especially moving the handicap. I think that's a great way of making sure that everyone has access to the building. I do appreciate the signage because I blew by the building 3 times because I could not see the sign 3 times. So I do appreciate it. And hopefully you'll, without the illumination and with the new design, you'll be able to see it. So I would be prone to approve.
Any further comment from members of the board?
I certainly had concerns about the handicap, the ADA accessibility, and they were addressed. So I have no further concerns.
Okay, wonderful. And seeing no further comment from the board, I too would agree. There's especially a clear public safety benefit in terms of the signage and believe in improvement around the handicap accessibility. So I too could seek to approve it. I would invite Mr. Yuko, who is actually the individual to motion the 2010 resolution. If you care to make a motion for approval, Mr. Yuko.
I was going to say, I think Bart Sheen and his firm and I are the only ones who've been involved in these hearings before in this application. So, and I noticed my sister was on the board for the first hearing, but she was absent for that meeting. So that goes way back. Anyway, yes, I will gladly move to approve.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
A second.
Thank you, Liz. Chris, you give us a roll call?
Sure. Vice Chairwoman Nguyen,
Yes.
Mr. Yuko,
Yes.
Mr. Mullen,
Yes.
Mr. Malay,
Yes.
Toth,
Yes.
Ms. Stager,
Yes.
and Chairman Spur.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
Thank you, Mr. Sheehan. Though it's getting late, I know we've still got a little bit of energy left in us. So let's take 5 minutes and return to at least begin 3 Edison Drive and see how far we can get there. So thank you, Michelle, for your patience especially. We'll take 5 minutes. We'll wait for Chris to jump back on and we can kick off. Oh, there he is. All right. Michelle, you're good?
Good.
All right, thank you. And Mr. Millay is back as well. Okay, and just as a note, Mr. Yuko is recused from this application. Okay,
And I'm
Marino and Mr. Steiner is back. Welcome back, Mr. Steiner.
Yeah, you guys
David and
bored
Melissa. No. We saved your, preserved your energy for this case. All right, 3 Edison Drive, David and Melissa Marino. I don't believe you have an attorney, so we'll ask you to start with a description of the case. But Mr. Ball, do you need to swear them in?
Yes, if they're describing some facts, I guess that's the best thing to do. Is the audio working okay now?
Let's see, hop off mute here.
Okay.
Can you hear us now?
Yes, we can.
Without having a double? Okay.
That works. If you could please raise your right hand, anyone that's testifying. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
We do.
We do.
And please each state your name and spell your last name.
Melissa Marino, Marino.
And David Marino, Marino.
Thank you.
Okay, if you could just begin with a description of your application, what it is you're here seeking, and then we can punt it over to your architect who can dig into the details.
Okay. As stated earlier, my name is David Marino. My wife and I have lived in Summit since 2013. We bought our house in September of 2015, so a little over 5.5 years. We bought the house and have loved Summit ever since. We are actually going to, if the board's okay, going to rescind our time and just pass this over to the architect. We'll give the testimony of the actual. Is that fair for the board?
Okay, sure. Yep, that's absolutely understandable.
Okay.
So, and all right, Mr. Architect, Andy will swear you in.
Sorry,
here.
John. So John actually introduced himself earlier when we were having audio problems, so I didn't feel like it was appropriate, but this is John, our architect. There you go.
All right, and if you could please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And please state your name, spell your last name.
Jonathan Bashevsky, B as in boy, A as in apple, C as in Charlie, C as in zebra, E as in Edward, WSKI.
Thank you. And briefly describe your background, experience, and 3 boards you've appeared before aside from Summit.
Sure, I'm a graduate of the NJIT School of Architecture, 2007. I've worked for many architects in the area, most notably Daniel Dubonnet of Summit and Alan Andreas of Madison. The last 3 boards I testified before were Metuchen, Plainfield, and Madison. I started my own firm in 2018, and I've been licensed in good standing since.
Great. And assuming no questions from the board, I believe we'll accept your credentials and you can
We will. Thank you.
Is it okay if I share my screen?
Yep, you may. Go ahead.
Okay, can everyone see it okay?
Yes.
So I'm going to zoom in on the existing plan. The project is to, the proposed project is an addition and renovation of an existing 1.5 story home in the R5 zone. The existing lot, as you can see, is a fairly irregular shape, but it does meet the required lot dimensions with a width of 86.99 feet, where 50 feet is required. The lot size is 6,144 square feet, where 5,000 is required. The lot also has a gentle slope from the rear yard towards about where the existing front porch and also proposed front porch is, where it shifts to a strong slope down to the road. You can also see that the existing site, that the setback cuts across the back corner of the house quite a bit, as well as the right side. And the front and rear setbacks, they don't even intersect with the left side because the shape is so peculiar. There's a few items that are going to be removed from the site, including a rear wood deck, a sidewalk to the backyard, and also there's a asphalt driveway in the front left corner that doesn't lead to a garage. It's just a parking space. I'm going to go over to the proposed site. So what we're proposing is a 2.5 story addition in the front, a front covered porch, a side yard 2.5 story addition, which would have a garage and driveway to pull up to, and a new proposed rear deck. The second floor is going to be added over the existing 1.5 story. Because of that, the right side setback will also be non-conforming because of the line with that. The left side addition will require a rear yard setback of 9.43 feet, where 17.4 is existing and 30 feet is required. I'll note too that the property to the rear of this is a residential property. This is the back of their lot. It's also substantially higher than this property. And the back is mostly where a detached structure is. It's not the primary residence right there. The front covered porch is going to require a setback variance of 21.17 feet, where 23.76 is existing and 25 feet is required. The principal building coverage is 28.29%, where the existing is 17.51, and the maximum allowed is 20%. I'd like to note though that roughly 50% of the proposed building addition is comprised of this front covered porch and the rear deck. And if those were removed from the project, the actual building would be within 1% of what is allowable on site. The proposed building has a FAR of 40.22%, where the existing is 26.27 and 35 is required. And the proposed site development is in conformity with the required impervious coverage requirements with 38.44%, where 30.66 is existing and 45% is the maximum allowed. I also have two comments about the report that was issued today with the staff comments. One of them addressed the existing front walk, which we left to show existing as it was going to the street from the front porch. We are in full agreement that this should be redesigned and directed towards the proposed driveway, so that the circulation would be made easier. The second comment is that a PE will be hired by the clients to develop the site engineering. We started this project roughly a year ago, and at the time, every PE that I know of and that the owners could find were so busy we couldn't get anyone to work on it. I'm familiar with the engineering side of it, so I was able to get it this far, but we will hire a PE to develop the topographic survey, which I believe will address a number of questions. That would include the final placement of the dry well and some of the retaining wall designs. I did have one question for Mr. Dower that I would like to pass on to the PE that we do hire. He had a comment about the dry well, that it should have a solid manhole, and the overflow should be cannot be directed towards the road. Being that the site slopes towards the street, I would like to know if it was okay if the cover was a grate, so that any overflow would be kept on the site, at least in that local area of the dry well, and would have the opportunity to return back to the soil on the lot and on the property and not be directed at any great volume towards the road. I believe that's everything that I have to walk through, and I'm ready for any questions or comments.
Mr. Dower, you want to jump in there?
Yeah, I know the city is not does not like the grates on the top. It would give that desired effect as an overflow, but they're concerned about it being a mosquito issue. So I would have to say no, but there's an option that they could do an overflow with a pop-up emitter. We've done that on a number of other applications. We just don't want to have the overflow directed to the street and have an icing condition. So I think the city will work with their engineer to come up with a solution that could include that pop-up emitter or some other options.
Okay.
Does that, sorry, just my question for you, Mr. Dower, or the architect, would that require us to condition this approval on a review of the stormwater management plan, or is this just a minor element of it that they as the applicant should be able to address? Oh,
I believe it's
sorry. Yeah.
Detail.
Sorry, I think it can be conditioned that the applicant will work with the city engineer's office to come up with a final design for the seepage pit installation. And the only other question I had, if we're going to go through the report, I believe was the setback from the AC units and noting if a generator is proposed. And then the other one was removal of the retaining wall by the old driveway.
Yes, the retaining wall will be removed, and there's no generator.
And AC units are as shown on there, but the setback, is that going to be compliant with the ordinance?
The note that I read on there said that there's a proposed ordinance that is likely to be passed by the time this would go to permits, that it would be 5 feet, which it would meet that requirement.
Okay.
The current requirement, 10 feet, it doesn't meet. If it doesn't pass or it's not ready by then, we would propose an alternate location.
Okay, then I have no further questions, Mr. Chairman.
So I'm just noting as conditions the acceptance of the engineer's letter and the coordinated design of the seepage pits. Andy's probably got a better phraseology than that. Yeah, okay, I see him smiling. So yeah, absolutely. Any questions, Mr. Snickis, for the architect here?
Just one question regarding the overall setback variances that are being requested. They seem largely connected to the configuration of the property.
Correct. The irregularity of the shape of the lot and also the way that the existing home is situated. The biggest part of the addition is the desire to have a garage and bring that in more conformity of what's in the neighborhood. And because of the way the house is situated, a side yard addition actually creates a rear yard setback problem.
Okay. Oh, sorry, nothing further, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Any questions from members of the board for this witness?
I do.
Believing that he's the only witness, so let's grill him. Mr. Steiner.
Yeah, I just, and I think it's more to Mr. Dower, and the question is they've provided no engineering testimony at all. Are we comfortable that all the items that we would normally have asked an engineer have been covered in the architect's report and your review of the process, that this will not cause any problems for neighbors, the city, or any other interested folks?
I think they've indicated they're going to direct all the roof leaders to the seepage pit. The seepage pit design calculations are there. They're adequate. And then it's just really the design of the overflow question that came up before. So, and then the location, 10 feet minimum from the house. And that's really so you don't have water seeping back into the foundation, and then also any proximity to the property line so that you don't cause a problem for neighboring properties. So I'm comfortable with what they're proposing, that's not going to be causing any issues with neighbors. And we can keep, if the board prefers, we can keep the drainage jurisdiction for 2 years.
I think that might be a good idea, especially in the absence of a second engineer to confirm.
Okay, so that is retaining drainage jurisdiction for a period of 2 years. If that'll make Mr. Steiner happy, I'm on board. All right. Mr. Millay, you had a question.
So regarding A00, there is.
I can't hear you.
Can you speak up? Sorry, Amy.
Can you hear me?
Now I can.
Okay, I'll come closer to the mic. All right. My issue is with the rear back setback that is supposed to be, I mean, existing 1740. I see it's now 943. And there is a dotted line here on the proposed plan. I'd like to understand what this dotted line near the setback 9 and 43 inches.
Sure. The dash line that's in the rear left corner by the proposed deck. That's a covered porch on the first floor, and the second floor is an addition above that. So that's open on the first floor.
Is there any way that we can remove that portion? Because I think the 9.43 feet is little too close to the neighbor.
The neighboring
address this issue.
It would be. I agree. It is relatively close. It is only on the first floor, but also the neighboring property from measuring on the GIS maps, it looks like their structure to their property line is roughly 40 feet. And again, because of the shape of the lot and the site, I don't see a way to set that back anywhere that would be close to what the existing building is set back at.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from members of the board? Okay,
I suppose I have a quick question, and maybe Ed can weigh in with some additional details on his opinion. But can we, I guess, just get some additional testimony on the floor area ratio? I know it's 5% over the maximum allowed, and just whether the site can accommodate that proposed increase.
Do you want me to opine on that or the architect?
I suppose the architect first, if he has a response, and if not, then you can weigh in.
I believe it can. There are some larger homes in the area. It does appear, as far as volume goes, it does appear in scale with some of the larger homes on the street and in the neighborhood. Also, the covered porch and the covered porch in the front does bring the scale of the building down quite a bit and soften the appearance of it. So I don't think it's out of character, and I do believe that the site could handle that percentage that's over in the FAR.
If I can follow up on that, Mr. Chairman?
Please, yeah.
In addition to that, and I'll pose this as a question for the architect, what features of the building do you feel help to address the mass and scale? Usually FAR is trying to address the oversized or control the size of a home on a property. What sort of architectural features are you proposing to help offset that?
So the biggest one is definitely the covered porch in the front. My opinion is whenever you introduce more roof area to an elevation, it tends to break up the facade and also bring the scale of the building closer to the ground and make it feel smaller. The architectural style of the house that the owners preferred has two gables has a gable on the left and a gable on the right, and a roof that spans between them to try to bring the volume down a little bit more. And And I think that does break it up sufficiently so it doesn't appear as large as it is as a percentage on the site.
In addition to that, the mass of the building as it relates to this rear yard setback issue that was raised earlier of 9.43 feet, is that to a 2-story portion of the building or is that a 1-story portion of the building?
That's to the second story. The first story of that is like I said, it's an open porch. And that's to give some sort of connectivity to, on the first floor of that area is an in-law suite for parents that will be there at some point. So they have an ability to access the rear yard, safely at their level.
That's from that porch area. Visually, does that porch do anything to the mass and scale of the building as well?
I believe it does lighten it. Whenever you remove a corner of a building and replace it with a column, it definitely does make it seem lighter.
Okay. The other benefit of this plan is you're trying to add a garage, correct, on the first floor, and that garage is more in keeping with the neighborhood.
Correct. They're one of the only homes on the street that doesn't have a garage or a driveway that's situated in front of the home.
Okay, and so this is in an effort to try to, again, complement the existing neighborhood without unduly impacting the neighboring properties.
Correct.
That's about all I would offer for the board.
That's pretty good. All right. Thank you, Mr. Snakis. All right. Any questions from members of the board? Anything further? All right. Any questions from members of the public? I'm not certain if there's anyone else here. If you are, you'll need to hop on video and ideally raise your hand or hop off mute and identify yourself if you're here to ask a question of this witness. Okay. Hearing and seeing none. Marinos, anything you'd like to say in conclusion? Assuming that's your only witness, I don't think anybody else came on board.
No, thank you very much for taking the time. I know it's getting late in the day, so I appreciate everyone's patience in this process.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. All right, one more time for the public. If you're here and want to comment on 3 Edison Drive, hop on your video and wave your hands. Otherwise, we'll proceed. All right, hearing and seeing no public commentary. Andy, conditions, what do you got?
I have 3 of them. The first is that the applicants will comply with the conditions noted in the engineer's report. The second is that a stormwater management plan will be submitted to the city engineer for review and approval. And the third and final condition would be that the board shall retain drainage jurisdiction for 2 years.
The only other condition that I had scribbled down, and Krista notes this in her memo, was submission of a survey and grading plan. Is that wrapped into the engineer's report?
That would be a requirement of the city that they submit a grading plan.
Okay, perfect. All right, very well. With that, I will enter deliberations. Who would like to get us started?
I do.
All right, Mr. Millay, please.
If I had a lot south to this property and I see my neighbor wanna take a setback from 30 to 9, I would be upset. So I will oppose that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Millay. Anyone in disagreement with Mr. Millay?
I would just like to clarify, if I can, that he mentioned that the setback is being reduced from 30 to 9.43. It's being reduced from 17.4 to 9.43.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
If we had a 17, I wouldn't have raised my voice.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand what Mr. Lay said.
Should I repeat?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, required 30 feet. And existing, we can live with the existing, but 9, I do oppose to the 9.
Mr. Mullen, the hour's getting late. Would you like to add some different perspective on this?
Yeah, I have to respectfully disagree with my colleague here on this one. I look at the overall site plan, and unless you are going to be building a very oddly shaped triangular house, you're probably going to you're going to be in a non-conforming situation regardless. And I look at the totality of this plan and the absence of objections from the neighbors as indicative of that. It's, you know, there aren't objections. Presumably they serve notice on everyone, or we wouldn't be here. So, you know, that point is taken. I also just look at what they're doing with the property itself. In my mind, it's an overall improvement to the aesthetics of the neighborhood, plus they're enhancing stormwater management. You know, notably, I'm thinking about that driveway just kind of sitting there on its own right now with no garage. And building a garage, moving the driveway over, it's going to create a much better streetscape. And it's going to give the applicants just a much more functional living space. So for those reasons, I'm in favor of this application.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mullen. Ms. Toth, any, oh, sorry, go ahead, Mr. Mullen. Oh, Mr. Millett, sorry. Thank you. Ms. Toth, I was just skimming through Mr. Conway's comments. Anything you'd want to add about that? Put your HPC hat back on.
Not particularly. That all of Edison Drive is kind of this middle century, middle America, and I think you retain in keeping with that.
Excellent.
And
anything further from members of the board? All right. So yeah, I too would recognize the irregular lot size and Mr. Snickus's helpful commentary about the neighboring properties and the addition of the garage and how this should conform to a large degree with the scale and just general aesthetic of the properties of that neighborhood. And with that, I could look to support this application. Would anyone care to offer a motion for approval? Ms. Sager, if you'd like to hop off mute. Oh, hop off mute first.
You're still muted.
Still muted. There you go.
There. Well, I just did want to say that I did spend 10 years living in Summit without a garage, and it is a little bit of a hardship. And this, the size and shape of this lot is a little bit of a hardship. I think that they are asking for a fairly modest, cramming a fairly modest little garage in here, and an overall modest improvement to bring the house up to a standard, that is reasonable. So I would support, and I would motion to approve.
Excellent. With a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Mullen. Chris, give us a roll. Gotta hop off mute, Chris, too. Come on, everybody. Wake up.
It's late. I'm sorry. Vice Chairwoman No?
Yes.
Mr. Yuko?
He's recused from this case.
Yuko is recused. I apologize. Mr. Steiner?
Yes.
Mr. Mullen?
Yes.
Mr. Millet?
No.
Ms. Toth?
yes.
And Ms. Sager?
Rosen?
No, I don't
Miss Adria, I think you spoke when you were muted.
Yes.
Yes. All right. Thank you, Marinos. Good luck with the construction.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank
and
you.
Thank you very
you're
much.
welcome. And I think Chris, we just have one set of minutes to approve.
No, actually, though, we approved those at the last meeting, and the other ones aren't ready, so we'll be doing double duty at the next May meeting. So I will have this for you.
Next May regular meeting, because we don't want to forget, we'll be together for Cinco de Mayo, May 5th, for Habitat for Humanity. So
Yes.
with that,
Okay.
we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Good night.